Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. As Natalia just noted, I work with brains and people, how they interact. And I've actually switched sides. When I was studying at the Helsinki University of Technology in Otaniemi, Aalto University nowadays, I initially started out studying computer science. And I was thinking that I would be one of the people developing artificial intelligence systems. That was what I was really interested in about. Gradually, I became more interested in what I myself called computer psychology. In other words, how should people understand computers so that we can build computers, which then gradually turned into a desire to not develop the computers, but actually develop the human beings. Throughout the 80s, I was delivering computer training courses at community colleges and such, kansalaisopistot, työväenopistot. And some people were really learning what I was talking about very quickly, while others were very slow to learn, and they held their mice like this and wondered why the cursor wasn't moving properly, and they were expected to move it just 90 degrees like this. And there were all kinds of really strange things going on. And I realized that I really loved delivering those courses, not because I was in love with the kilobytes and kilohertz of the processors and the memories at the time, but because I loved it when actually someone understood what I was saying and they were learning something. So in 89, 90, 91, 92, gradually, having given my little finger to psychology and cognitive sciences, I realized I needed to move away from the dark side of developing this artificial intelligence matrix and Terminator and other machines. I could not live with myself. And I'm just half kidding when I'm saying all of this. Just half kidding. How can I live with myself when my son is being popped by a Terminator? And I helped develop it somehow. I very rapidly realized I need to be on the human side, of course. So I also, I've been majoring in interactive digital media at the Helsinki University of Technology, but then I studied communications at the Department of Political Sciences, valtiotieteellinen, Valtsikka, at University of Helsinki in downtown Helsinki. So this, as a backgrounder, is what means it leads to the fact that I'm now helping human beings develop. What we're seeing is an so-called information society, which ridiculously enough is doing three very strange things. One, it's developing really advanced hardware, boxes that are supposed to be really advanced. The government and teches and universities, etc., are calling that the development of information society, tietoyhteiskunta. And they are also, secondly, developing software for those boxes. And thirdly, really nice connections. We should be, and I'm doing my best now to develop these processors sitting here. That software and these connections, that's what I believe firmly nowadays information society, tietoyhteiskunta, should be about. This as a backgrounder explains why nowadays I work as a personal brainer, IVBIC instructor, and I also work as the operator voice. So I'm in your phones in a number of languages on a weekly basis, and also now the voice of the Finnish train operator. That is actually the word they use themselves. In Finland, we often talk about operaattori, only in the telecoms industry. But there are hotel operators, train operators, and telecoms operators. So I'm an operator voice in quite a broad sense of the word. And this is, of course, these are my Twitter accounts if you want to have a look at them at some stage. I'm becoming increasingly active there as well. Reidar Wasenius, personal brainer, and my company name BRIIM. Now, when we talk about brains and machines, it means in practical terms that what I will be talking about now is essentially trying to give you a sense of what each one of us should be doing today. Preferably yesterday, but today at the latest, we should be doing because of what's happening in the world. That's why I was very happy to be invited here. I mentioned TKK, Teknillinen korkeakoulu, the Helsinki University of Technology. I was very recently speaking in San Francisco as the only Finn at the Neurogaming conference. And it's very interesting to see what neurogaming means today. It illustrates how new all of this is and why I'm particularly happy that you're sitting here, because it's all quite hazy. Also at this conference, they collected as much as possible to even be able to have a conference. They are talking about and had on display devices about how the brains can steer computer devices with headbands and all kinds of other technologies. They had there, of course, computer games that can help you train your brain. They had computer devices beginning with Oculus Rift and many others on how you can fool the brain into believing you're in a virtual world that you're really not, etc. So what we're looking at clearly is now a multitude of technologies, and I think, and this is one of my key points to you today, I think by far the most important thing really is to think about these things and make a personal decision on what you personally feel is your stance, and I mean very firm opinion on whether we should be developing the computer stuff to become more smart or humans to become more smart. That, I think, is the key issue here. You've all seen the science fiction movies, so you know what might happen in 2019 or 20XX, whatever. There are all kinds of years that now have been overturned because in the movie they did some different shit than the Blade Runner, and it's so we don't know. But it's probably something like this is going to happen. So I think it's of crucial importance to think about, regardless of where the technology is, how it's being developed, does this make me more smart, or are they now spending lots of time and effort and money on making me more dumb? So I have to think less. That is the key, and I'll talk more about that. I was one of 3 writers of a book called Yhteisöllinen media osana yrityksen arkea, and what we were talking about is, of course, how technology already today is affecting us. And BRIIM Center is the place, the world's first brain fitness center, Aivokuntokeskus, where we help people develop their brains. So what is happening right now here are a multitude of things in these 4 areas. Obviously, your sensory systems are working. So you will retain some kind of small film snippets, memories of this right now. That's, of course, one kind of memory type that we have. It's a system which takes memory input not just visually like in a film, but with a multitude of senses and stores that. Now that is very much a biological meat thing. It's coming in through multiple organs. So what might happen if we upload somehow a brain or a mind somewhere? We'll talk more about that. It's one of the reasons why I think, for instance, the film Transcendence will remain science fiction forever. I'll talk more about that just shortly. But this is very important. It goes on regardless of what we do. Then, of course, most of you are probably here for this. We're talking about the semantic memory system that we have. Well, maybe he says something. It shows me some kind of charts or drafts or gives me what is traditionally called information, knowledge. Maybe there are his personal views, maybe I don't agree, but still, we're talking about concepts. So certainly there are some concepts going through my use of language and visual signs, characters, icon, indices, and symbols. Ikonit, indeksit ja symbolit. So semiotics and semantics are, of course, in this realm. Now, what is also interesting are, of course, the skills, and this is what I mostly focus on. You're all repeating yourselves like robots right now. If you freeze now and feel how are your hands, your feet, you've been sitting in that position hundreds of times. That's how you sit, and I haven't been stalking you. Don't come and hit me afterwards. She's all yours. And you do that with your eyeglasses quite frequently. That's how you do it. With your left hand, you press it like that. I haven't been stalking you either. You're all repeating yourselves right now. You are. Your clothing, the way you have your hair, the way you talk. You don't all talk like me. You have your own way of talking. So in small things, big things, how you treat people, how you react to criticism, etc., you keep repeating yourself all the time. A habit is the highest form of a skill. You become really skillful at walking, which you couldn't do when you were born. None of you came out of your mom's tummy, your belly, and then you did like this. What is this baby? The doctors would have been scared shitless had you come out of your mom's stomach and did like this. So you're very skilled right now. You're very skilled. You're employing hundreds of skills every minute, that skills, motoric and other skills that you didn't have when you were born. So clearly that is something which plays a great role in our, and we have such things stored in our system, in our neurological system. Sensations, semantic information, procedural information, and also affective or emotional information. Some of you like me at this stage a little bit, other ones dislike me. It's not because I divide people, but that's because everyone you know here. Look around. Who do you know here in the room? Have a look around. Have a look around. Each person you've met or known or just had some kind of little interaction with, you either like them or dislike them. We form opinions. It's one of the basic things we do. And they are stored within us. Now, if we look at these, it means that for a human being to develop herself or himself, it means that you should every day get some new sensations that lead to new experiences being stored. You should be reading or listening to new people, coming to Assembly, looking at TED.com. How many of you know TED.com? Sure, larger percentage than usually, yes. Very good to put in new facts in your head. Doing re-evaluations is particularly challenging, but doing some new things every day is very important. This is one of the things every one of us should be doing, regardless if you want to be surviving in a robot body in the future or not, particularly if you do. This is a very important chart. You should be feeding your neural system new things on every quadrant every day. One of the things I urge people to do is every time you go grocery shopping, purchasing food to eat, buy something you never purchased before. The decision-making process, taking this ugly fruit home, preparing it and eating it is a very good, easy, simple daily thing. Many people who look at their receipts find that they have this ruispuikula, laitilla onnellisen kananmunat, HK blö, maksalaatikko, HK blö, maksalaatikko, chiquitita banaanit, etc. Maybe 20, 30, maybe 30, 40 items that they buy repeatedly. In a typical supermarket, there are tens of thousands of items. So instead of just going once every few years to Chico Tico Taiku Tex-Mex Possu Juhla Sangria to get some new experiences, you can go to aisles 13 and 14, and you should. You really should. To keep your system up and running properly. So what we're looking at is an interesting question of what is our mental, the core of our mental processes. We want, how many of you enjoy drinking coffee in the mornings? Yes, please don't do that for a week. See what happens. It won't be like in Train Spotting, you know, Evan McGregor. But it's very important to know that cravings is not just that the fact that you want coffee. What you need to do really is realize that the pressure, the positions, the temperatures that you're repeating right now, there are also cravings. In himoja, mä haluan toistaa aistimuksia with all my senses. That's a core thing. Habits, you take things for granted and you develop attitudes towards people. Those, it's crucial, and that's hardcore brain training to really change those. We do this all the time. How many of you think that this is absolutely horrible brainwashing? Just like in science fiction movies. You know, and the pod people. This one high school student comes into oh my God, they've taken all over all the people in the village. And you just sit there just like we did. Yes, we know, join us. So either you're with them or you've been brainwashed at this as well. You put the ridiculous amounts of toothpaste after just seeing a few pictures. They go directly from your sensory organs into skills. Not only do you repeat yourselves, but you copy from your surroundings, and you make your children do the same thing. Nobody worries about washing your teeth for 20 seconds, spitting out 2/3 unused toothpaste, keep making sure you wash it down tens of years. So what, a few euros per year per household. Colgate, Palmolive, Pepsodent, etc. Ka-ching, billions, literally billions of euros every year, because people are not breaking their habits. They're not stopping to think what they're doing, just repeating, and copying. You don't have to be talking about Nuda or Jesus or Sivarius eller Draksvik or anything else to be brainwashing people. Actually, this is what's happening. I've been working in the radio and TV for many years. There are tens of examples like this. So being able to be aware of what's happening is crucially important. And what we're looking at already today is that the mental issues in the Finnish work life is the number one issue. Not people having bad backs or anything like that. Half of people who are never going to work again, loppuikää työkyvyttömyyseläkkeellä, are there due to mental reasons. Welcome to Wellbeing Finland. People don't know how to use their brain, how to cope with their daily lives. And this is not diminishing. The problem is growing. Welcome to Wellbeing Space Age Nokialandia Finland. This is not Slovakia in the 17th century. This is Finland in the 21st century. So being aware and understanding things about in this area is crucial importance to all of us. And what we need to be able to do today, and particularly if we're going now to be more and more, we are working with computers, so we need to do many things at the same time. The new technologies that people are mindlessly using, sending emails, tweets, etc., we're doing it, etc., is literally breaking our minds. We become hajamielisiä, tankspridda. It's good word Finnish. Hajamielinen. Hajoaa palasiksi. Closely related to vajaamielinen. Why did I step into the room? Oh, where did I put my keys 10 seconds ago? What did the guy tell me his name was 20 seconds ago? Hello? What the fuck is happening? These are not small things. People are getting ill, and companies are wasting billions in Finland just every year, as is the healthcare system as well. We need to make increasingly quick decisions, very demanding, multiple decisions. We need to remember a lot, both short-term memory in terms of things to do and in terms of studying. Are schools giving us study techniques? How many of you have had any kind of proper education at school with study and memory techniques? You know, more than opinoohjaaja telling you once or twice, but actually that you were giving education. Joo, meidänkin koulussa oli elokuussa kerran oli muistitekniikoita. You don't learn anything if you just shown some memory technique once. It's not included in Finnish schools. What's the number one thing in fancy speeches? The Finnish peruskoulu just turned 40 years. 40 years. Are we learning to learn? We're not. I've been to Rovaniemi, Sodankylä, Tampere, Turku, Oulu, etc., Jyväskylä, Kouvola, Helsinki. Kids are not learning. We didn't learn how to learn at school or use our memory. Very interesting. And we're expected to study and remember things all the time. We're expected to be innovative. Creativity techniques are not given. How do we know how to motivate ourselves? We're not giving those skills. So currently we're in a situation where the world is changing very rapidly. We don't have the mental skills. Kädentaidot, for instance, is an ordinary Finnish word. You know how to use your hands. Mental skills. Typically, if you Google it, is about sports. And in work life, they are called soft skills. To me, they're the most hardcore, most important skills we should have. And particularly when this is happening. I wasn't talking about science fiction. I was talking about today. Now, what's happening gradually today and is going to be happening in the future are things like this. This is pretty far out. How many of you have seen the source code? Okay, I won't give any spoilers here. Please watch it. It's an interesting movie about, shall I say, survival. I won't go into any more details to spoil it. Very interesting. How analytical, how cool can you remain when you're becoming really nervous? Interesting stuff. Is this possible? Probably to some extent. It is already. People are, I won't go into too many details, but there are people who are in a similar situation, at least in terms of their hearts and lungs, and gradually, of course, with their brains. So yes, this is within realms of possibility, and we're to some extent going towards that. And this film begins, and I can tell you what's shown in the very beginning. A guy with this huge piece of his head missing, a soldier, has a thing inserted, click like this on his head. So it replaces part of his brain, and that certainly is happening. And there are all kinds of other things happening which I won't. How many of you have seen The Machine? It's a very new British film. Thank you. Not many people will have seen it. Absolutely. If you're sitting here today, you need to see The Machine. Go and see it. It's very cool, sexy, full of action and technology, etc. Not a mainstream, but it's a British film, came out in May. Very fresh. And what we're talking about here is that people really need to be prepared for the fact that already today people are getting prostheses, or in computer terms we're talking about peripherals, attached or in form of headbands connected to the brain and our neurological systems. So we need to be increasingly skillful at steering things. My recommendation, get some of those headbands and learn to steer things with your mind. There are consumer products out there like the Emotive Epoch, the Muse headband and others, whereby you just sit in front of a computer and play games like this. How many of you have tried something like that? None of you. Oh, wow. How many of you know what I'm talking about in detail? Okay, very good, yes. But only half still. Very good. So what we're looking at already now is just first fun, but gradually, of course, arms, legs, limbs, etc., and wheelchairs being moved just with thinking. Stephen Hawking doesn't need to move his eyes. Well, had he been born a bit sooner, earlier, later, he would still be able to live for quite a long time. Now he's steering stuff with his eyes, but he could just think. And the wheelchair moves and words come out of a synthesizer, etc. So we can steer already computer games and computers. So prosthesis/peripherals. Now input is very important. You need to make it pays off for you to make your brain prepared to receive all kinds of new signals. You're all fairly young here. We are all fairly young here. So, we will live the day when the doctor tells us, well, do you want the bio version or the electronic version of a new eye or some kind of other input devices? Or do you want to see infrared or ultraviolet or hear infrasounds or ultrasounds? Or what do you want? You have the money, so you're successful future computer people. So, you might have, or you'll be participating in those weird projects. So the interesting thing is, of course, that it pays off to make yourself prepared at this stage. And my next to last slide in the following one tells you about some of the issues that will arise if you do not. It pays off to start thinking about this now. Well, your flesh is fairly fresh and young, and your neurological system is quite flexible still at this age. Don't wait too long. If you're an elderly person, neither your flesh nor your neurons will be up to, even if there's some kind of fancy technology. You'll rot in that machine, or they try to graft something on you. It probably won't work. Artificial internal organs, of course, it's an interesting thing. You need to be able to cope with pain, and robot bodies or some kind of machines. How many of you have seen the new RoboCop? I'm mentioning films because they give very condensed, interesting insights into what could be going on. The amount of meat being put into this new 2013 RoboCop body is much smaller than in the old 80s RoboCop movie. He had quite a lot of flesh, but it was almost like an armor, and that he was there. I won't tell you how much, but towards the end of the movie, you'll see there is not a lot of meat within that robot chassis. You cannot do that to anyone. That needs to be a mentally and physically fairly exceptional person and a well-prepared and trained person, particularly initially when these technologies in our lifetime will be experimental or very new. Very new. So for you to be compatible or be able to cope with anything like that, you need to be seriously thinking about what to do today. Biological incompatibility, rejection, hylkiminen, is of course one of the key issues. We can't do very much about that, but looking in order of seriousness and intensity of training required, loneliness. How many of you have participated in a retreat? Retriitti. Do it. I recommend it for multiple reasons. One person, yes. You go somewhere in the countryside, there are other like-minded people. It can be religious, can be very secular, whatever your flavor. Lots of retreats, retreatteja. You're silenced for 24, 36, 48 hours, whatever. Typically from Friday night to Sunday night. You don't say anything. Yes, sir? Does assembly count was the question. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I think the noise and the other interactions here make up for that. So I wouldn't count, no. But it means in practical terms that you're able to be with yourself. I headed for 5 years the Swedish-speaking media and communications Bachelor of Arts program here in Helsinki, Medianomikoulutus at Arcada, University of Applied Sciences. I started that and ran it for 5 years. And for those years, the first thing I did with new students was that we went into the woods. I changed the program slightly, but one of the things that we did was actually a retreat. It was super difficult for 18, 19, 20-year-olds to be silent with their own thoughts. And afterwards, some of them told me, look, I got really scared. I started seeing and hearing things. People are not able to be alone. Oh, and that brings up an interesting piece of research published 3 weeks ago. I don't know if you happen to see it. In the UK, people would rather get electric shocks than be alone with their own thoughts. It's on the web. Very interesting. They prefer to getting electric shocks to being alone just with their own thoughts. We're so used to hearing and seeing things and talking, and which is nice, but we can't be alone. Now, RoboCop and other film and other fictitious scenarios give us no idea how long that person's mind in a brain is completely offline, disconnected for everything when they do the transfer. And even if they're not there more than a few hours or a few weeks, it may feel like years, and they come out basket cases. How many of you have tried flotation tanks? Do it. Be yourself 60 minutes. In the UK, Float works, downtown London, for instance. I haven't seen anything in Helsinki yet. The business idea, maybe? Doesn't cost much. You're in a saline solution, suolaliuoksussa. No sound, tactile, scent, seeing, hearing, anything. 60 minutes. For some people, it feels like ages. After 45 minutes, they come out scratching and screaming. Why didn't you let me out? What the fuck was happening? You said it was only an hour. Well, you've been there 43 minutes. What are you screaming about? You're lying. They look at the clock. Very interesting neurological things going on. Solitary confinement has brought this up in some military and also some prison scenarios. It's a very interesting thing what happens here. We start producing our own things and believing in it. Like we're dreaming. When you shut everything out, the brain starts creating pictures, even in a wakeful state sometimes. So being increasingly able to be alone super valuable, could literally save your life and extend it by 100 to 150 years. Not today, not tomorrow, but in a few years. Phobias. The fewer phobias you have, the better. If you learn to confront them. If you learn to confront the spiders, snakes, mice, rats, whatever, UFOs, darkness, etc., the better. The more you're scared of all kinds of weird, small and big things, the greater the likelihood is that, well, for one thing, that the loneliness is not possible. And secondly, of course, that you'll be unable to completely be yourself in the long run, because you might not be able to control your environment completely. Pain, physical pain. All of this is beginning to sound like military training, and to some extent it's of course closely related to that. Of course we have no idea of Robocops or other people's pains. The Matrix, source code, the machine, etc. The films I've been talking about. Some kind of physical pain must have been involved at some stage, unless you're fully pumped with morphine, which again then is not really good from a compatibility perspective. So what we're looking at is that it pays off for you to be able to confront fears, but also physical pains. That'll make the probability of you living to 200 or 300 years much, much greater. The last thing, this is not by no means a comprehensive or exhaustive list, of course not. Just highlighting this super little brief time we have together, some things to think about. New priorities is very interesting because you need to have your priorities really straight as a human being. In my mind, not just to be able to be a candidate for a Mars mission. Has anyone thought about going to Mars? One-way ticket? Yeah, I would imagine there are some people here. How many of you have been thinking of maybe wanting to live 300, 400, 500 years in a machine body, partially or wholly to some extent? Yeah, I thought as much. So one of the things we also need to think about is new priorities. When I'm no longer being like this, like these meat bags here, there are two reasons for my priorities changing radically. Firstly, I won't be a being like this anymore. I will be something else. Let's put it out there right now. Transcendence talks about that a lot. But as I said, I think that's always going to remain science fiction because of the quadrants that I talked about. We're based in this biological substance, our minds are. But the second reason is, of course, that if I'm no longer hungry like this, I might need electricity, I might need fuel. And for other reasons, it means the complete basis, literally the basis of my needs and urges. Some of them disappear, there are new ones. It means I will start behaving very soon, almost immediately, in very different ways. Because my priorities, literally, are very different. It's not that I might not love human beings anymore. I will serve you. I'll be back, maybe. But I can't relate to them anymore because I am a different one, even if I wanted to. So I think the most important thing that to be thought of, besides those four quadrants, is the skills quadrant already for today. And this is what I want to finish off with, talking about the skills. How many of you know how to sit? How many of you heard that you should be sitting straight, with your back straight and sit still? Have you heard that? Yeah, almost some of the most worst things you can do to your back. We really don't. How many of you really know about the anatomy of the back and supporting organs, how you're supposed to sit to minimize the probability of breaking your back? How many of you know it? Okay, fewer hands now. The same goes with the brain. We need all information about how the brain and mind works and skills. And this is what I want to show you here as my last slide. So when we had this one quadrant where I talked about the skills, these are the mental skills. We all know what kädentaidot is, dexterity skills, etc. These are mental skills. And they are abilities. We all have these as innate abilities, synnynnäisiä kykyjä, of course. The point is, can I become more skillful? Can I learn creativity methods so that I can increasingly skillfully come up with new viewpoints and ways of thinking about creating ideas and developing them? Am I good at being interacting with people? Remembering things? Knowing how my neurological system works and store things there. Our biological associative memory system is, of course, very different from a silicon-based. Silicon-based one that mimics it enough might be creative. We'll see. But for now, we need to understand our system and be able to learn memory techniques. If I learn memory techniques, it doesn't mean that my memory system becomes somehow better. Some part of my brain swells. That's not brain training. Brain training means I get techniques, methods, not tricks. It requires training to learn memory techniques. Päivää, hello, etc. To learn people's names, etc. Do I know how to understand really what I dislike and what I like? What are my desires and urges, and on the other hand, what I want to avoid? Pluses and minuses. Can I increasingly skillfully use my gut feeling? That's the original intelligence that other organisms on this planet have, like we do. I just feel I need to avoid this and go towards that. Now we're trying to overanalyze things. The bigger the decision, the more important the gut feeling is. It's built in, it's very advanced brain training, neurological training to learn to trust your gut. Not like in the taxi queue when you're 19 years old, you do decisions based on certain things when you do what you do. When you're a bit older, you do it differently, and even older, you do it more differently. So you learn to make decisions and motivate yourself and stick to those decisions more skillfully over age. But you should be training more and more so that you become, because this is useful today. Are you able to focus for a long time, really intensely? Are you able to relax on the other hand? And what about your sensory skills? The better you are at using your senses, how many of you can taste the temperature of air? Not hard at all. You start training, it's not hard at all actually. You can taste with your mouth the temperature of air. Not tough, not hard. Just an example of the fact that we're often blindly trusting our eyes because we're such visual people and visual society. Pays off to use your other senses. You might be very glad you did. Looking at this list, finally, this is the same list basically that I was talking about where we have challenges already today. These are the kind of issues where people have problems, they cannot cope. This is basically the same list. These are the same items here. Focusing, decision-making, memory, creativity, motivation, etc. That's important today. The more clear you're in your head, the greater the probability is that you'll be able to be compatible with a digital system today to steer computer games with your mind really focused way, so you'll be the ultimate brain gamer when you just play video games really rapidly with your brain like this, plus create art with your brain, which is our next program here. Perfect, thank you very much. I look very eagerly forward to seeing that. Hope it's not just chaos, but that they're super skillfully mind ninjas who do it. Well, these are early days. And thirdly, of course, not just gaming and fun and art and science, but actually survival. If you learn, get information about how your brain works and learn to use it increasingly skillfully in the 4 quadrants and in all these skill sectors, then you have a much, much greater probability of being compatible with digital systems, which are today science fiction, but will be reality tomorrow. I thank you very much for your time. Almost all of you are going to die. At least this flesh will rot for 9 out of 10 people here, most of it anyway. That's a fact. Very tough to escape. So this was a fantastically unique moment in my life. It'll never come back. Not in your life. I just spent it. I'm sorry you can't get a refund. I just sincerely, humbly hope that your investment, because death is now 35 minutes closer, that it will pay off somehow. Thank you very much. What you meant with this means questions or comments? Yes, sir. Oh, sorry. Yes, and the microphone, of course, is for the video feed so that they can hear as well. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so one of the questions I had was like, what do you think, you earlier talked about the developing the machine and developing the like the human brain. Do you think there's an equilibrium like between how much one should like focus on developing the technology and how much one should focus on developing one's own brain?
Are you talking about you personally, or you mean because there's the individual level now and the society? So are you asking me what I recommend you to do, or what I would recommend Finnish society to do?
Well, the society, I'd say.
Okay, society. I definitely see that we are way underspending development of human beings. We're spending too much on technology because politicians, society, and companies, the current and future megacorps, they of course want to make money. I've been working for American, Korean, Finnish corporations, so I know that they want to make money by developing technology. So I think there should be increasingly strong forces in play in society to develop human beings. That's where energy and time should be put.
Yeah.
And I'm not a militant activist at all. I'm just talking about actually, talking like this, doing trainings in our own lives, affecting how school system is built, etc.
Yeah, and another question I had was, you're talking about these scenarios about like maybe machine bodies and other stuff. So in my opinion, there's a lot of endocrinological things that like make up of what a human is. So how would you say one could be able to train oneself for like endocrinological changes in one's like body?
Well, it's actually, of course, that we're talking from the sort of mental and neurological levels increasing towards the meat level. You're talking about hormones, our metabolism, aineenvaihdunta. Of course, training or preparing ourselves is probably the toughest. It's most abstract for us because, of course, it means that they're not really techniques or methods necessarily, but I would say being able to withstand pain, fatigue, things like that is very valuable. Of course, being able to go sleepless for long times, being without food and or drinking for long times, etc. Those are the kind of things you can do to sort of whip or train your body, if you will. Which ones are the biggest challenge there? Of course, we don't know which ones are the most useful because we don't have this robotic body solution yet. Just speculation. So that's why I talk the least about those as well, because they're the most speculative ones. But pain for sure is important. Probably sleeplessness, loneliness, and such in combination.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Do we take the other question or not? No, unfortunately not. Okay. Thank you very much.